perfect. I said, my guys hated him. I said, they're going to like you. I said, grab a card and give you a call. If I had more time, I'd tell you the other side of this story because of what he did. But he takes my card, he leaves, and 3 days later, he calls me. No, he called my office. I had one employee at the time. Marcia said to me, do you remember talking to a guy down in Savannah that really didn't need a telephone to talk to you? I said, she says, oh my gosh, he was loud and demanding. But he said he'd pay anything, so I was quiet and I listened. I said, well, what's the deal? She said, you're speaking at his employee meeting. I go, you're kidding. No. I go, when is it? She said, July. I go, did I have an availability? She said, he said he'd pay anything. You're available. I must have mentored her well. I said, so what's the deal? You need to call him. We've already signed a program agreement. Everything is in place. I go, okay. I called him up and I said, Steve Gilliland here. He said, hey! He said, hey! He said, I told you I was going to get you. I said, I know. I said, tell me a little bit about the event. He said, well, first of all, 3 things you need to know. Number 1, blue collar, front line. Number 2, they hate meetings and they hate speakers. And number 3, we're going to have the meeting on a Saturday. That's their day off, and it's going to really tick them off. I said to Marcia after the phone call, I said, you're going with me down to Chattanooga. She said, what am I going to go for? I said, there's going to be over 500 negative, angry construction workers sitting in a ballroom on their day off. You're going to cheer them up. We flew down, I'll never forget, to Chattanooga. That morning, I'm a nervous wreck. We had it set up, this is banquet style, we had it set up classroom style. I had big tent cards made up, and I said, Marcia, write their names real big. She said, I've got it. And I kept talking. She said, I know how to write their names. She said, relax. She told me 5 times to get their names on these things. She said, you're nervous. I said, a little bit. She says, get up to your hotel room. Relax. I'll check people in. I'll write their names real big so you can interact with them. I came back down 30 minutes later. First thing Marcia said to me, I don't think they're using their real names. I said, how do you know that? She said, so far there's 5 here. Fred, Wilma, Bam Bam, Dino, and Barney. I said, what'd you write the Flintstones for? She said, when a guy's 6'6", 255 pounds, wearing boots, jeans, and a cowboy hat says he's Wilma, he's Wilma. Then the owner showed up. The owner walked up to me. He said, are you ready? And I said, I'm a nervous wreck. And I said, did you see some of these? He said, hey, they're good boys. He said, they've kind of lost perspective on life. But he said, I heard you speak that day in Savannah. And he said, you had a message. And he said, that's what I want. Now, he may not have used the word elevate. But he did say, I want to take this business to another level. And he said, I think I want them to understand that it's not about boards and nails and concrete. It's about who they are. And I think I already heard that today. He said, so you give it all you got. And he said, don't leave anything in the locker room. Bring it all. Boy, he had me so fired up then. I was like, man, I'm ready. I walked down to where Marcia was, and he come back up to me and said, oh, there's one more thing. He said, we're not going to start till Brian gets here. I said, who's Brian? He said, all my field supervisors, project managers, and foremen report to him. He said, he's a good man. But he said he's lost his passion and his purpose. He said, we'll wait till he gets here. He said, don't let him intimidate you. He said, he's not going to intimidate me. Not unless he's that guy right there coming down the lobby. Guy comes down through the lobby, 6'6", I'm thinking 6'5". First thing I saw, pecs. I'm like, I'm thinking the guy is built. He looked like he jumped off a Marlboro ad. He's got a pair of tight blue jeans, a pair of Tony Lamas ostrich cowboy boots, and a belt buckle the size of a Dell laptop computer. He's got a cowboy hat on. He's got a coffee cup, and he's not drinking coffee. Brian said, no. The owner looked at Brian and said, this is our speaker. He looked at me and went, pfft. And he walked in the room. I'm like, oh, that's just great. Meanwhile, all the good seats in the back are gone. So he has to sit up front with me. Then I get introduced. This was a very cool piece they did to introduce me. I liked it. Thank you, Matt, for doing that. Whoever was responsible. Here I am in the back of the room. Marcia's standing beside me. 500 construction workers, predominantly 99.5% male. And the owner starts it off this way. All right, knock it off. He said, I know it's your day off, and I know you don't want to be here. I'm like, that's it, remind him. Yeah, that'll be good. He said, but there's one piece of house cleaning. Don't you dare do to this year's speaker what you did that guy last year. I heard Marcia standing beside me go, I'm going to be at breakfast. I'm like, oh yeah, go ahead. By lunchtime, I was all wound up. I mean, I am wound up. I'm doing the morning and the afternoon session for this guy. By lunchtime, the first guy back in a very large room was Brian. I'm like, oh, no. And I turned so he couldn't see me. He walked up behind me, tapped me on the shoulder and said, Speaker Man. I like that, by the way. You know, Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, Henry shines, Speaker Man. He said, you have something I can write with? And then I started to realize, Margaret was right. Margaret used to say, what comes from the heart goes to the heart. I said something from my heart that must have hit his, because by the end, and it was a predominantly male audience. And I tell you that for what I asked at the end. You see, for me, it was making sure they understood what was important. And I said, how many of you guys are married? Hands went up everywhere. I fought tears. I was a single guy in 1999. I fought tears, and I saw everybody raising hands, and then I saw Brian do this. When he did that, I said, how many years have you been married, Brian? He said, 19. I said, do you have any children? He said, 3 boys. I said, what's your wife's name? He said, Lisa. Fighting back tears, I said, then don't do what I did. I said, for 11 years, I worked in a company, and 9 of those, I had a great career. The last 2, it became a job. I said, because I lost my passion for what I was doing. And I wasn't enjoying the ride, because I was focused on the wrong things. I said, worse yet, Brian, I used to get up in the morning, there was a craft of coffee. It was already made. I didn't expect it. And she never felt obligated, but she always made it. And there was always a little half and half in the bottom of my favorite coffee cup. And I would pour that in every morning and walk down the hallway and never think another thing about it. Until the morning I woke up, and she wasn't there. I said, I never in my life realized what was important to me until I had lost it. I said, Brian, here's what I want you to do. I said, I want you to think of those things. I want you to think of the reason why you got into this business. Think of the reason you got into this business. Take yourself back to that day. Get the fire back in the belly. Elevate that passion. And then I looked at him and I said, and when you go home tonight, you find your wife of 19 years and you do something I should have done. You give her a kiss in the cheek for no apparent reason, and I said, then you go to bed. After you tell her you love her, you go to bed and you smell those sheets. Whatever made me say it, I said it, and I said, you smell the sheets. And I said, and the tears then started flowing down my face. I said, I'll bet they're fresh, I'll bet they're clean, and I'll bet, I got a hypothetical theory and a chance of getting this right. I'll bet in how they got that way. But when's the last time you told her how much you appreciate even the little things? Just like in here, it went from laughter to you could have a pin drop, and I said, Brian, you going to do it? I said, when she comes to bed, give her a kiss and thank her. He looked at me in front of all of his peers and said, you're bizarre. I said, bizarre or not, it's going to work. I'm leaving a hotel downtown Chattanooga, Tennessee, and all of a sudden I heard, hey, Speaker Man. Marcia's with me. She goes, I'll go get the car. I'm like, yeah, go get the car. I walk up and I said, hey, big guy, what's going on? He said, apologize. I said, for what? He goes, you're not bizarre. He said, but you're the first person that really made a little bit of sense. He said, we have this crap every year. And he said, let me tell you something. When I was 5 years old, my dad bought me a Tonka dump truck. By the time I was 7, he had a skidder and a grader under the Christmas tree. By the time I was 8, I knew this is what I wanted to do. He said, I love what I do. But he said, for the last 11 months, I've focused on everything that's wrong instead of focusing on what's right. He said, it is no more, it is what. I said, it is what it is so many times. He said, you're right, it is what you make it, he said. And I'm coming back Monday strong. I'm going to remind myself why I love what I do. But he said, I stopped you to tell you I'm sorry for your situation. Because he said, if I ever woke up and my wife Lisa wasn't laying beside me, I'd tell God not to wake me up the next day. He said, thanks for the wake-up call. I said, whoa, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going home tonight. I'm going to find that woman. I'm going to lay one on her and say, I love you. I said, you may want to practice that on the way home. I said, what about work? He said, I plan on that too. He said, come Monday, baby, I'm back. He said, I'm back. Sports memorabilia, I've got a ton of it. But the only piece of sports memorabilia that hangs in my office is something from the Steelers, and then there's something more personal than that that hangs behind my desk. It's a letter dated July the 20th, 1999. It's from Brian. Before he parted ways, I challenged him again to do what he said he was going to do, and he said he was going home and tell his wife he loved her. And then I said to him, I said, what about when you go to, he said, I'm not going to do no linen sniffing this weekend. In the letter, in the first paragraph, he says, thank you so much for reigniting a passion I've always had, both in my personal and professional life. He then talked about a lot of other things. He got to the bottom and he said, and I even did the sheet thing. He left his home number, the work number, the page number. I called him at home on a Saturday morning. The brief version of this goes like this. I said, Brian here. He said, yep. He said, who's this? I said, Steve Gilliland. He said, who? I said, the speaker from Chattanooga. And he said, do you have any more of those tips? I said, tips. He said, I like stuffed pork chops, white gravy, green beans, mashed potatoes, coleslaw, butter, carrots, homemade biscuits, and sausage gravy. All my favorite food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, has been fixed for me in the same day only 3 times in 19 years of marriage. Since you spoke, I got it again. He said, she even gave me a massage. I said, what happened? He said, I got home and she was by the kitchen sink and I went to lay one on her and she turned too quick and I kissed her in the eyelid. I said, what'd she say? You've been drinking. He said, I went to bed that night. I had no intention of telling her anything about how the sheets smelled, and then they were on my face. He said, I could smell all the foo-foo she sprinkled on them. I didn't understand. I said, what are you talking? He said, the foo-foo, whatever she sprinkles on, makes it smell good? I go, here's a revelation. I think it's called Downy. He said, whatever it was, I had a little mini speaker man on my shoulder going, tell her, tell her, tell her, tell her, tell her. He said, I leaned over and I kissed her on the cheek and I did just thank her for sheets. He said, 3 days later, I was walking by the laundry room and my wife, Lisa, was crying, throwing laundry into the washing machine. I said, Lisa, what's wrong? She said, Brian, these are happy tears. She said, for 19 years of our marriage, I've done this laundry because I thought I had to. She said, today's the first day I've done it because I want to. I've told people all over the world, you know you've arrived and you know you're enjoying the ride. You know you're a leader in your practice when people are following you because they want to, not because they have to. But just so you leave on a funny note, he then said to me, speaker man, she grabbed a big old blue jug of something, poured it in the cap, threw that in the washing machine, looked at me and said, big boy, you get a second cap full. Thank you so much and God bless.